Well, hello friends, and welcome back to the cabin. I'll tell you, I really had a busy week this past week trying to get everything organized for all that we did last week, from digging ditches to placing pipe in the ground to pulling wire from the hut over here to the cabin and getting the boards stained for the foundation of this new little mini hut that we're going to build. But yeah, I'll tell you, and the weather was actually really nice, because although it got up into the high 80s and right at 90 at one point, it still wasn't really humid. So that has been a real blessing. Anyway, I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about the little building that we're getting ready to build right here. So if you were able to watch our last video on the Maine channel, we actually got these 2x10s. Jennifer put the timber oil on them for me while I was down there working on the array. We had milled them up a couple of weeks prior, I think, when they were working down there at her place, getting all of the bulldozing done and getting it ready for them to start working on a foundation for their new home. So this building here is 8 feet wide. It'll be 9 feet in depth. It will have a small 3-foot porch on the front so that I can open the door to the outside. That way, if there's any kind of rain blowing, I don't have to worry about it getting in and disrupting any of the equipment on the inside that's going to serve the power needs for the homestead up here. Now, I've also had comments, is Jennifer's home going to be off-grid like the cabin is here? No, she has decided to go with utilities. But this system here is only designed to work this cabin alone. There won't be enough juice to share with Jennifer, and even if I could, she's about 300 feet away, which if I was to try to, or if they were to try to pull anything from these solar panels, that would be just too far. There wouldn't be a whole lot left when it got there. So like I said, this is designed to just function for this cabin and this workshop down here, because the power needs are very, very minimal for the cabin, because I have put mainly everything on propane that you would normally run off of electricity. So my needs are very minimal. And this is not, this system right here will store about 12 to 15,000 watts of power with the batteries that I have. Now, if I got another battery, you know, I'd have a little bit more. And I think that I probably use around 3,500, maybe 4,000 tops in a day's time, in 24-hour period. So I would have enough to function 3 or 4 days on the batteries without recharging anything, if you look at it that way. But yeah, this is not a big solar system by any means. It's, like I said, just enough to function for the cabin and the workshop. But this little mini hut right here, we decided to call it the Juice Shack. We had a comment come in, and I thought that that was really cute. And it's going to resemble an old style cabin, or like a little log home, or maybe like a little general storefront. So I think it's going to be quite cute when I get it done. And I'll show you, I picked up some hardware for it today. So I picked up 4 little pieces of angle iron. This is what they look like right here. They're about 1/8 of an inch thick. It reminds me more of like a shelf type of a bracket, but they are rigid enough to be able to hold that little building to keep it from shifting, because it will weigh quite a bit when I get it done. So if we get a wind that's strong enough to move 4 of these, I've got some 3" by 3/8 inch concrete screws as well, and then there is room for 2 of these 5/16 screws to go in there. Probably what I'm going to do is kind of cut this off here, because it still gives me a place to put this screw in the bottom. I've got to widen this hole, so I'll have to drill that out, but I'll cut that off, and then I'll actually be able to put 2 of these 5/16 up on the side of one of those 2x10s and hold that down. So I wasn't going to go to any great expense other than to just tie this down. Now, originally I had planned to just shave off 2 sides of a log and lay on there, and I was going to put an anchor bolt up through there, but then I decided not to, because I had those 2x10s left, and I would still end up kind of building the same box type of a foundation. So I decided to go ahead and save those logs for something else. Anyway, so I've got 4 of those. Like I said, I've got enough of these 5/16 bolts, and then I've got 4 of these anchor bolts, concrete bolts that will go on each one to hold the corners to keep the building from moving. Then my son ordered me some 2-inch washers right here, fender washers, for the hardware that we've got that's going to hold the panels down. So if you can think, now this is a 5/16, well, it does go through there. I'll have to screw it through there. Okay, so if you can imagine this going on top of the panel like so, with a panel on each side, that is what's going to hold my panels down. This gives me 1 inch on each side of my screw that will screw into the unistrut down there to hold my panels on, because my panels, the aluminum frame, is about 1 inch across, 1 inch down, and 1 inch back across on the bottom, because they're bifacial. And so this will pretty much, now you got to account for the 1/4 inch screw, right? So you got to take 1/8 of an inch away, but there will be about 7/8 of an inch on each side holding my panels down. So that's going to be just right. But what I'm going to have to do with these is I'm going to lay them out. I'm going to paint them black so that that silver doesn't show up on the black, and try to be careful when I put it down that I don't scratch any of the paint off, and then that should look really nice once that I get it done. But I've got about 50 of these, and I went ahead and I bought a 3/8 drill bit, because I couldn't remember if I had a concrete bit that size for these that I have to screw into the columns that I've got out there. But that is the latest hardware that I picked up for the solar system. Even though it was going to be for this little building that we're getting ready to start, I still need that material, because all of this is actually one project, even the little building, because setting it there allowed us to be able to pipe or send power in different directions without having a long leg, either from the array up to the building or from the building over to one of the other buildings, because it may look larger on film, but the buildings are actually a little bit closer together than what you might think. From where we are putting this little hut or this little building, I'm probably within 75 feet of the kitchen, of the carport, and of course the cabin wasn't very far. We're going to have a gazebo out here. We might even put an outlet out there close to where this little building is going to be, because we're going to tear down the old sawmill building and put a gazebo over there. And my idea is to build like a small fire pit in the middle. That way we can sit out in the evenings and enjoy ourselves, even if it's in the fall or early spring. And then, you know, going down there to the workshop with a power leg, it's not going to be that far. So we're fairly close to where I live. If you want to say it in those words, we're close to where I live with this new little building. But I thought that that juice shack was a cute little name for that. So I thought, you know, I think that's going to stick. So anyway, but yeah, this is the hardware that I need, that I'll probably be getting started this week on getting that little building, getting it going, and seeing how far that I can get along with that. You know, my son called me and he says, "Dad, there is a threat of some severe weather kind of over on the East Coast this week." So he said, "You might want to go up there and check up in the back of the cabin and see if there's any potential trees that might come down, because it's going to be coming from the south, I guess heading north, or depending on, you know, once the storm moves in, it might change direction or whatever." So that cedar that you see behind me right there, which is behind this first set of arrays that I built, that's going to need to come down, as well as another tree that's back there as well, because I don't want to take a chance on anything falling on this solar equipment. So I'm going to clear out everything around that. This cedar tree actually lost the other half, which I don't know if you can tell, but way up high it was actually split off. In one of the last storms it came down, and that was left standing, so I need to go ahead and bring it down. And honestly, there'll be a couple of good logs out of that cedar, so we don't want anything to go to waste, even if we have to remove it. So we'll take it, re-engineer it, and use it somewhere else, so it'll be just like it never left, right? So thank goodness we finally got this front one completed, because I was tired of looking at those posts standing up there. But the way that I designed this was to be about a foot off of the ground, because I had to get low enough for the panels behind it, because I'm kind of cramped for space, to be able not to cast a shadow when at the sun's angle, whether it's late winter or summer. I had to be able to go over the top of that with some sunlight to hit the backside, like I said, without casting any shadow. But the price wasn't too bad on these. It cost us roughly right at around $700 a piece to build these. By the time you add in all of the screws, the big bolts that I had to order, that hardware, all of the pressure treated material, the unistrut, the screws, washers and things of that nature, the concrete that went in the holes and so forth, we probably spent about $700 a piece. And they should last a while, because we did treat the bottom with roofing cement when we put them in the ground, so that will help protect them even more for surface rot and things like that, which generally happens, I think, a lot before even underground happens. But right there at the surface is where a lot of wood gets destroyed, so I wanted to try to protect it as much as I could and use the pressure treated material, because I definitely don't want to be building another one of these arrays anytime soon. But this design right here, you know, we could have made it one big panel, but I didn't really want it looking like a drive-in theater when somebody pulled up here, because if you could imagine those two hooked together, one setting up on top of the other, that would have been a huge, like, drive-in screen. You remember those days, right? Go to the drive-in? So by cutting that in half and actually adding another row, which was probably, if you look at it, maybe a little bit more of an expense, but it kind of broke it up a little bit and kind of kept them at the same level. And I will be able to look over the top of them in the fall when the leaves are down, be able to see the mountains and so forth behind. Well, I thought I would bring you down here and give you a little bit different angle of what we've been working on, but I still have one more 2x6 on this back set right here, and then I'm going to run a 2x2 along the bottom is what my panels will come down and rest on. And then I need to do the same thing up here, mount the unistrut on this front one, get that bolted down, then I could actually start putting my panels on and getting them secured once I put that little foot or knee brace or whatever it is that you want to call it on there to try to help support the panels, because I'm not going to crank my hardware that's going to hold the panels down. I'm not going to crank that down real tight, because if there's any contraction or expansion in the wood, I don't want to crack the solar panels. So I'm not going to crank them down real tight. The little knee board or the foot is what's going to support the weight, because it's either going to be tipped up at a 20-degree angle or it's going to be tipped down at a 50-degree angle for the winter time. So that will hold those panels regardless of which way they're tilted. And I'm pretty happy with the way that this turned out too. I think that it looks halfway decent, and I think it's much better than coming in the front and then going underneath with the cable, because I would have still put it in conduit, or I would have to put clamps on the wire underneath, and you know, I don't have much of a crawl space in there anyway, so just enough to get in there and work on something if I need to. This, I think, was a whole lot better, keeping that out, bringing it out here, because it's like out of sight and out of mind, right? And then coming up and going into my panel. But yeah, I don't think that it looks too bad, and I think it turned out okay. But friends, I certainly do appreciate you all hanging out with us and sending us, you know, really good comments and good suggestions on the build that we've got for this solar system here on the homestead. We really do appreciate it. We want to thank you for that. And we look forward to seeing you back up here at the cabin again next time.